Hey there, welcome to episode 28 of the Boob Report podcast, powered by Helix Interactive. Today, I'm hanging out with Tracys Spielman, a self-professed type A personality who was diagnosed with breast cancer right at the beginning of the pandemic. She is sharing her story with us today. Let's get started. Okay, everybody. Well, welcome back. We are joined today by an incredibly amazing woman that I was introduced to, Tracy, who is relatively new to survivorship, along with the rest of us. She has reached her 2-year anniversary just this past Valentine's Day in 2022. So she is joining us today to walk us through her journey and the different steps of treatment that she has gone through, so she can sort of share her story and knowledge about all this. Welcome, Tracy.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is something I probably wouldn't have done 2 years ago. Kind of an introvert, but I think it's important to share my story. So I'll start with that. I'm a busy mom and career person and didn't really have time for this cancer thing. I was in the military and I was an engineer and a mom of 3 teenagers. And I was actually on a work trip in January of 2020, our favorite year, where I thought, it's time for me to get my mammogram. I get them every January. So I was actually on a work trip when I made the phone call, and I thought, oh gosh, I should do a self-exam quick because they're going to ask me and I don't want to have to lie. So I did a self-exam and I was like, there feels like there might be something there. But I called and they said, oh gosh, we can't schedule your mammogram if you have any questions. You have to go see your gynecologist. So I quickly made an appointment there. So that raised my anxiety a little bit because I thought she was just going to say, oh yeah, come in and we'll check it out. Quickly went to the gynecologist the next Monday, and the nurse there said, 50-50. I'm a survivor too. They don't want to say really, but they got me in for mammogram pretty quickly. I think this all happened within a week. I'm very type A, so if I'm in charge of my scheduling, I'm going to get her done. So I was willing to drive all over Denver to get it done.
Right.
I was golden. It didn't matter. I was ready to drive. So got in for my mammogram, did that, and they came back and they said, I was waiting. And they said, well, good news. Everything looks fine. Mm-hmm. But because you mentioned something, we're just going to do an ultrasound too. And I thought, okay, great. I'm almost, I was getting ready to get on a plane that afternoon with my daughter. We were going to Phoenix for a soccer tournament. It was going to be great. So anyway, they started doing the ultrasound, and I'm an engineer. I'm not in the medical field. They start doing it and beep, 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 the clicking that really raises your anxiety. Mm-hmm. But then she started grinding underneath my armpit, and I thought, well, that's weird. I wonder what that's about.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, all that ended, and they brought the radiologist in, and he said, we see some stuff here. We're not sure. We took some readings of your lymph nodes on, in your armpit. And I thought, oh, geez. So they said, you need a biopsy. So I went home and I started Googling everything because that's what we do. Yep. And that was really scary because you get the worst stuff there. So got in for a biopsy pretty quickly after that. And as we were doing the biopsy, I knew that it wasn't good. I could just tell. I was asking a lot of questions. I was trying to be kind of lighthearted, but by the end of it, I knew what was going on. And I was just waiting for the call because they had biopsied 3 spots to include lymph nodes. Uh-huh. So I knew it wasn't good, but I didn't know the extent of it.
Right. Now, just to interrupt, did you do the biopsy while you were there, or did they have you come back?
They had me come back. It was pretty shortly thereafter, though, probably a couple days passed.
Okay.
I think I had, I was doing this pretty quickly. From the time I made the phone call, it was probably within a week.
Right.
So fast. Felt like forever, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I actually was going to Phoenix the day of the biopsy. That's how it works. So I decided, I thought I knew what was going on, but I thought I can do this. I can go to Phoenix. My daughter's counting on me. She was 12, and I have twins that are 12. And so we went to Phoenix, and I waited for the phone call the next day. And the call was that all 3 were positive,
Mm.
to include the lymph nodes. So that's terrifying. Like you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. So came back and started trying to come up with a plan because I'm really type A, and not having a plan is the worst thing you can do to me.
Yes.
So
I know I'm a planner too. So it's like, yeah, that was torture for me because it was, every doctor's appointment that I went to after that, it was like, okay, well, first we need to do this. We need to pick a surgeon. We're not exactly sure when we can get this going. And I'm like, no, I need to know.
Yeah.
I need to know when this is happening. But of course, then I was trying to schedule stuff around my family.
Right.
Oh, we can't do this because it's my son's, freshman year in college, and my daughter has this at school. And my surgeon's like, I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, that was interesting because I had been traveling a ton for work, and the kids are super busy. I have 3 kids. Not a blessing. I'm never going to call it a blessing, but COVID happened then, right at the same time. And so some people make funny comments, right? They don't know what to say to you. So people will say things like, well, 2020 was a really good year to get cancer.
Yeah.
They don't know what to say. But for me, because I had been on the road so much, that shut down the travel. So that did allow me to be more free flowing with the appointments and to really focus, I think, on getting that done. Which I would have anyway, but it was forced. And so, yeah, you're right. You have to pick your team, and it's not just one person, it's 12, because I needed a surgeon. I needed an oncologist. I knew I was going to have to do radiation. I knew I was going to have to do all of the things, because after I had met with the oncologist and they saw the biopsy, I was diagnosed as HER2 positive, and I knew at that point I was going to have to do chemo and radiation, and then they would see after that where I was going to go. So it was going to be a long road. I remember asking the oncologist when I interviewed them, how long it'll be, and they both had the same timeline. It was going to be roughly 2 years before the appointments would slow down. I was having trouble just even wrapping my head around that. I mean, because I'm a planner, I wanted it done faster, and you just can't speed it up. And so that was hard. Because usually, if you work harder, you can get it done faster, but you just can't. So pick that whole team fairly quickly. Ironically, I didn't want to talk about it, but by talking to some friends, I met friends who gave me recommendations with people that I really already knew. I just didn't know she was a surgeon. I mean, it was amazing how that team came together, and I love my team. It turned out great, but I'd never had to pick an oncologist before, so I had never asked the question. So did a little bit of research on top of just talking to people, and got that nailed down and got those appointments set up. And so you mentioned, I was diagnosed on Valentine's Day. Everybody remembers that really COVID started coming in hard, like 2 weeks later is when it hit. I started chemo right then. So because it was HER2 positive and I had 3 tumors, the way they approached it was to do chemo first before surgery, try to reduce the tumor's size. And then I would do surgery after that, and then radiation following that. So I started on chemo, and the first chemo, my mom was there, my husband was there, had this full support system. And then COVID hit, and nobody could do anything with me. They couldn't come to the appointments. My kids were home from school, which was not necessarily a blessing because they got to watch all this, whereas otherwise they would have been in school. So I'd go and I'd do my chemo, and my husband would pick me up. And so that was difficult. Chemo was hard. I did decide to cold cap, and that was a hard decision for me. I'm an engineer. I do a lot of research, and there were pros and cons to that. It was expensive. Didn't know if it would work, but for me, I needed a little control over something. And that was something that, if it worked, that was my little bit of control. If it didn't work, I tried. I also had kids, and I saw a lot of kids. I didn't want to scare the kids.
Yeah, exactly. And we've had a previous guest who did the cold cap thing, and that was her thinking as well. Was that she didn't want people to look at her like she was sick, and she didn't want to scare her daughter, which as a mom, I totally get that. I absolutely understand that. We joked a little bit too that it was a little bit of vanity, because you're like, yeah, I don't want to lose my hair. I don't want to look sick. And I get that. I mean, hell, I've got the, eyelashes going and everything. So, but I appreciate that, the honesty, because I think a lot of women feel that way. They're like, I have to have control over something during this process. So I can absolutely relate to your way of thinking with going with the cold cap. It wasn't covered by insurance.
It's not, and it's expensive, and it hurts. It does. Yeah. And I've talked to friends that said, I didn't even think about it. Losing my hair was no big deal to me. I like scarves. I can do fun stuff with scarves. Right. I'm not good like that. I barely wear mascara. My hair is really all I had. I have a lot of it. And so they said, you're still going to lose 60% of it. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, well, where? Right. And I did. I lost probably 60% of it. But I kept enough that, I don't know, it just helped me mentally. I just needed a little bit of a mental boost. Again, it was COVID, so nobody really saw me. Right. So in the end, maybe it didn't matter. But for me, that was something that I did, a decision I struggled with, but I would do it again, mm-hmm. Even though it wasn't that comfortable, because it was something I chose and I had control over.
Right.
So I did 6 chemos. Again, after the first one, nobody could come. Mm-hmm. And those were not awesome. The first day you feel pretty cruddy. First couple of days you do, but I was able to get through those. And then I moved right into a double mastectomy, mm-hmm. Which happened in the summer timeframe. And that's, all sorts of fun, but that, fine, just plugging along. I had a plan. So having a plan is all I need. Have a plan. I kept clicking away the days, kept a log, would cross things off, kind of like a checklist, just trying to get through it. Mm-hmm. After that, I went into radiation, and had 7 weeks of radiation, just, sunburn on sunburn on sunburn. And again, we're still in COVID, so nobody's coming. It's just you. Yeah. I had a great support system. They did what they could. I had people come out of the woodwork. I mean, I got cards from people that I barely knew. I mean, it was amazing. My kids' friends came, it was incredible, but there's only so much they could do. They'd drop food off at the door. I couldn't really see them. I was worried about being sick.
Oh yeah.
With the COVID, I was really worried that at some point the hospital wouldn't be able to treat me. They always told me they had no intentions of shutting down, of course, but nobody did. And, when people got sick, their staff would go down and they'd have to make changes. So I feel somewhat fortunate that I was already kind of in the cycle. I started right when COVID started. And so I was already on the regimen, and we just continued.
Right.
And not once did I have to miss a dose, other than one time some of the chemo got stuck in an ice storm down in Texas.
Oh, well,
so, a little bit of it was fine. Yeah, no, that went fine. So, so went through all of that, got through radiation, then I did reconstruction at the end of 2020. So all that went, like it does. Mm-hmm. Then my oncologist started me on it's a chemo pill. It's actually 6 a day, Nerlinx, for another year, because I didn't have a complete response to the chemo. We did that in addition. So I'm actually still doing that. I'm trying to wrap that up in the June timeframe. So
I'm sorry, you said it was 6 pills a day?
6 pills a day.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus urine asursol or, tamoxifen, whatever people take, but I take that on top of it. So, wow. It's been quite a road. I feel like I'm coming out a little bit on the other end. My appointments are starting to slow down now. Mm-hmm. Still do blood work, regularly and such, but, there for a while I was going to like people do, going to the hospital, 3-4 times a week for various things, just different treatments. And so, I'm from South Dakota, so I feel really fortunate that I live in Colorado now, where the facilities are really close.
Exactly.
Because I talk to people from home, they're driving, 2 hours to chemo a day. I mean, it's hard. So, so that was a blessing as well, that we have such great facilities, so close. So that's where I am right now. And so I'm still kind of wrapping up the treatment and entering that new phase. I think that's also scary, that monitoring phase, or just the, what if you want to, the further away you get from it, I think the more comfortable you probably get.
Honestly speaking from experience, because I hit my 5-year mark in September of 2021, and I'm due for my yearly. And when I hit that, I had gone, several months before. I'm like you, I go in January, February for all my appointments and stuff. And I asked my oncologist, I said, okay, well, I'm hitting 5 years this year. Does this mean, do I still come see you? And he goes, yeah, we actually have taken it out to 10 now. So we want to see you once a year until you hit your 10-year mark. And I'm like, what? He's like, is that, are you okay with that? And I was like, as long as you keep telling me, you're good, and my tumor markers continue to go down, I'll come see you once a year. That's totally fine. But I do, every time I make that appointment, there's just that little, flutter in my stomach. Please. So
I hope that goes away. Like at first, even the tumor markers, I'm doing those now, and I track them, I map them, I chart them, I word like that, but I
totally type A
and down point one, those scans are a blessing and a curse too, right? Because what I've learned is, I mean, I was so healthy before that. I had never even had a CAT scan or an MRI, so there wasn't really a baseline to go by.
Right.
And so at first, if you're that way, you have your first scan and they find something, right? They find something that's probably been there your whole life. Other than the cancer, right? They find something else that they have to monitor, and then they clear that, and then they're like, well, but now we found something different, so in your liver, and then they have, they watch that, and then they clear that, and so that can be kind of nerve-wracking too, because you have to wait, and it's probably fine, and it's probably always been there, but you didn't know it, and so you're constantly chasing something and then trying to clear it.
Right.
And so as much as at first I was like, let's just scan me every week and make sure it's gone. My oncologist was like, we don't do that.
Not how it works.
And that wouldn't help anyway. So I'm kind of coming into that mode where the appointments and the scans will become less frequent, and you just need to really pay attention to your body. And that's hard for me too, because I felt amazing when I was diagnosed. Like I work out every day. I still do. I did then. There was zero indication other than like just finding that bump was, I felt fine. And I think a lot of people do.
Right. I didn't feel, no pain. I had 6 tumors in my left breast, and you couldn't even feel them. I mean, trust me, my husband's a boob guy. Never felt them. Never felt them. Yeah, it's and I think that's kind of the scary part too, is something is growing in your body, but you feel fine. You're working out, you're living your life. And I don't do this to scare women. You and I talked about this. We don't want to scare anyone, but you really, really, really need to pay attention to your body. And even if it's just that fleeting thought, oh, something doesn't feel right. Act on it.
No, that was a huge takeaway for me, because I was just going through the motions. It was time for my annual exam. I'm pretty black and white. I mean, if a machine says I'm good, I'm okay. That's cool. But because I'm glad I said something beforehand, because if I would have had the results, I probably wouldn't have said anything. I would have just assumed I was wrong.
Right.
So, and you have to be your own advocate. I mean, the medical team is amazing, but they only know what you tell them.
Exactly. My gosh. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Communication is key. You have to be open and honest. They're not judging you. They're there to help you. So you have to be honest with them.
Right. Yeah. They see tons of patients. And so and they see you for a few minutes. And so I come in there with a list on my phone, and it's kind of a joke between my oncologist and I, because she knows me now. And so I come in and she's like, okay, show me your list. And so I get out my phone and I go through my questions. It's getting better. They used to be very long appointments.
Yeah.
But she answers all my questions. I go through what I think my next steps are as far as appointments. I also feel fortunate that I was type A. I am a type A. It's not awesome to be young and have cancer, but that helped too, because I was used to tracking things and jotting things down. And the fact that I couldn't have anybody come with me, you usually always want somebody else there to just kind of take that in and listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't have that luxury during COVID. So you're just in charge of managing that yourself. And so being really organized was helpful there.
Right.
But yeah, you have to say something. And they'll tell you that, that's no big deal. I'm not worried about that. That's the term my oncologist often use. She's like, we'll check that. I'm not worried about it. Those are the words I'm listening for.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about and have you on is because I loved how you said, I had a plan. I wanted to get this done. Things needed to happen in this chronological order. And you felt like sometimes it was taking a little bit longer, but it wasn't. But that's how it felt like to you. Yes. I can't tell you how many women I talked to that are the exact opposite. It moved too fast. I didn't have time to think, So I want women to understand that, there's no right or wrong way to feel about this. It's how you're personally experiencing it.
Right.
I got my diagnosis September 12th. I had my bilateral mastectomy on November 15th. So, timeline wise, it moved along pretty quickly, but it wasn't something where I felt like I was being forced to make decisions or anything like that. Quite honestly, I felt like that was a lifetime between those two dates. Yeah. So I wanted to touch on that because I find it very interesting, women who tell their different experiences and how the timeline went for them.
Yeah, I was, and I would do this differently if I had to do it again, but I was so anxious to get going that there's multiple hospital systems in Denver, but there's two in particular that I was kind of teetering between. I didn't know who I was going to pick my oncologist from. And so I interviewed two, but one of them allowed me to get my, all the tests you have to do before you start chemo. One of them was willing to write those scripts and get me started. I actually went ahead and booked all my appointments with that hospital system, and then ended up picking an oncologist from another.
Okay.
And that was a bit of a mess, just transferring that data. And, they have different machines. And right. I know that now. I wouldn't do that again. That wasn't ideal. I should have waited the 24 more hours. But I was so impatient. And once I get my mind set on something, I just want to finish it.
Right.
And you can't. I mean, it's a long journey. But whatever was in my control, I wanted to get going. And so that just it was for my mental health. It didn't make the cancer, those few days are no big deal. And they told me that all the time. But for me mentally, I could sleep better, knowing that I had done everything I could do. So, that's just my personality though.
Well, and I think that just circles back to, you keep saying you're a type A. I think it just circles back to having control over something, being a part of the decision, being a part of the plan, and mapping things out. I know that, 5 years ago, my husband came with me a lot of times because, there were certain, excuse me, appointments that I went to that I'm really glad he was there, because I'm organized, but I'm very emotional, and I sometimes when I hear something that I don't want to hear, I shut down a little bit, and so it was so nice to have him there to ask the questions, take the notes and stuff like that. So I admire you for being, the type of personality you are and the self-confidence that you brought into those appointments, because sometimes I think women aren't willing to speak up for themselves and they regret not asking certain questions when they're there.
Yeah. And that's another thing I've learned is it's always easier to get the answer when you're in the appointment than afterwards. You can still get it, reach out to the nurses or whatever. It doesn't mean you have to wait 3 more months, but
right.
It's so much better if you can go in there with a list of questions, because you forget too. They start talking and then I do this all the time. She starts talking, she'll ask me questions, and then I'll look at my list, and she's covered 80% of it just in our conversation.
Right.
But a couple other things that came about that I wanted to ask, and I'll just jot those down in between appointments. I added something today. I have an appointment next week. So I added something today that I wanted to ask her about next week. So I just try to keep track of that to make sure that I come out feeling like I've had everything addressed.
Right. And that's one of the things that I want to be able to provide with the Boob Report is that we're going to put like a little ebook together for women who have been diagnosed with steps, that they can just have with them, questions to ask, things to look at, how is this medication going to affect me, things like that, so that they feel confident and they sort of have an outline with them that they can take, and that you can also add, questions that they want to know personally that aren't as general as what we have on there for them, because I'm all about the knowledge, and knowledge is power, and going into a doctor's appointment with the confidence that you're going to be asking the questions you want to ask, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, that would be great. There's resources out there, but have something in one place that you can, you would be, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Exactly.
What to ask, really. It got better, but those few appointments were a little, I didn't know what to ask, really. But then as we got into it, it became obvious. But some sort of checklist would be great.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a brilliant thing to do. And I'm so happy that you were able to come on and share that with us. Cause like I said, every woman's journey is different. There's no right or wrong way to go through it, but I love having amazing women such as yourself who are willing to share your story, because, another woman can take something that you said resonates with her, and she can use that to feel more comfortable in her journey. So I so appreciate you being able to come on and really hang out with us today, because you had an amazing story. You're still so new, to the survivorship and everything. So I so appreciate your open and honesty.
Absolutely. Yeah. I appreciate you having me. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I probably wouldn't have done this, but I do feel like there's benefit to giving back. Everybody, like you say, everyone has your own experience. It's not a competition, I had chemo, you didn't have chemo, I had radiation, that's not what it's about. And so I think a lot of women get into that and they try to compare their experiences. And when I first was diagnosed, somebody had said, there's like 400 different combinations. I thought, I had no idea. So everybody's potion and is different. So you just, to be there to support somebody is awesome. But again, you can't compare any two experiences because they're all so different. So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Tracey, thank you. I appreciate this so much. And it's given me the chance to get to know you better, which is amazing. I think you're a rock star. Just when we were talking before we started recording, I'm very in awe of you and how you got everything, your whole plan together and everything. And it's just been wonderful to have you on the show today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, so Tracey is quite the badass. I envy her incredible self-confidence. We have links and information where you can learn more about her on our website at www.theboobreport.com/podcast, episode 28 show notes. And a very big thank you to all of you for spending time with us today. Be sure to like and follow us, and definitely share the podcast with your friends. You can become an active listener and support this podcast by clicking on the podcast link on our website at theboobreport.com. Take care.